Hi, I'm Adamsdownboy, and welcome to the first video in the Mother Clucker Clan's guide series to Destiny 2's reprised Crota's End raid. I wouldn't be able to produce these without my ever-helpful clanmates, so I'd like to thank my fellow Cluckers, returning veterans Erin PK, Electric Sheep, Minoni and Tooks, and fresh-faced newcomers to our raid series, Hathu and Jester, for running the raid, recording everything, and mostly sticking to instructions. As ever, this series is aimed at newer Guardians who might be looking to try the raid for the first time and want to try and understand the encounters, and for those who want to step up into more specialist roles. Each video will explain the aim of an encounter or section, the arena you're in, the mechanics that apply and the Clucker way to execute them as painlessly as possible, how to recover if something goes wrong, fireteam roles and ideas for loadouts. As an innovation, and thanks to the raid map maker extraordinaire Priony for suggesting this, I'm also dipping my toe in the water with a bit of animation rather than static graphics to explain the mechanics for encounters. This added roughly 6 weeks onto the time it usually takes to put these guides together, as I've been learning while doing. We ran the raid way back in the 2023 Festival of the Lost, which is why you'll see people using masks instead of helmets and dropping candy during encounters. I hope you think the animated explanations are worth the wait. But before we get to the initial section, first we'll look at the unique mechanic to the reprised Crota's End raid, which is the process of gaining and using the Enlightened buff. To gain this buff, you'll first have to collect the Chalice of Light. You can do this from a podium, or bucket as the Cluckers call them, or from another player. Buckets holding the initial Chalice of Light can be found near the start of encounters and sections, and empty buckets can be found throughout the raid, which can be used to preserve the chalice temporarily. Once a Guardian claims the chalice, they'll see a meter in their feed that will fill up over the course of about 20 to 30 seconds, with the speed the meter fills being boosted as they or people nearby kill enemies. Once this meter completely fills, they'll hear a chime and see a brief red flash and gain the Engulfed in Light debuff. This has a 10-second countdown. If it reaches 0, they will die and lose the Enlighten buff. During this time, the next chalice holder will need to claim the chalice from them. It's a good idea to let the next holder know when your meter's 75% full or so they can get into position if they've wandered away. Anyone holding the chalice will be marked for other fireteam members with a diamond objective marker, so it'll be pretty obvious who has it. The Guardian claiming it will need to be standing right next to whoever's got the chalice, and both will need to be stationary or moving very slowly for the interaction to work. Once the chalice has been claimed from a Guardian, the Engulfed in Light timer will be replaced by the Enlightened buff. This has no timer and allows you to interact with objects in the raid to execute the encounter mechanics. Using it you can charge capture plates, light lamps, pass through barriers and pick up Hive swords. You'll lose the buff if you die, so do try not to. Additionally, while you have the Enlightened buff, you'll be unable to reclaim the chalice from another player or from a bucket. After you interact with an object that requires the buff, you'll lose it and start a 45-second Drained of Light debuff timer. For the duration of the debuff, you'll again be unable to interact with the chalice. Although a teammate can claim the chalice from you at any time, you'll only become enlightened if they interact with you when your Chalice of Light meter is full and the Engulfed in Light timer has started. You can deliberately use this to juggle the chalice from player to player. Doing so before the meter fills means that no one gets enlightened or drained of light, and any existing drained of light timers can run down. At various points through the raid, you'll be able to preserve the chalice by interacting with an empty bucket. Even if your meter is full, preserving the chalice in a bucket doesn't grant Enlightened, only claiming by another Guardian does that. However, be aware that interacting with the bucket to preserve the chalice will start the Drained with Light debuff timer. One thing we would counsel against is, for Season 22 at least, taking off any artifact mod that generates elemental orbs and strand tangles. While these are fun to use and can help with nearby ad clearing, if you're in a hurry to collect the chalice and an orb's nearby, your interaction will pick up the orb in preference to the chalice, which can lead to unfortunate deaths. If you are in a fireteam using elemental orbs, then chalice holders, enlightened guardians and guardians who are drained of light who are locked out from claiming the chalice and so can't do accidentally, should use them as fast as possible to prevent problems. If you've run the D1 version of the Crota's End raid, the armour should look familiar, very Hivey and less eccentric than Root of Nightmares. There are some useful raid mods that help with specific areas of the mechanics, providing buffs when you're drained of light, or additional damage resistance when you have a relic sword, which you can only equip on raid armour to use in your builds. Needless to say, as with most raids, the weapons usually have very good base stats, and the potential for excellent trait perk combinations. As ever, you'll need to extract the patterns from 5 Deepsight versions of a weapon to shape your own at the relic in Savathûn's throne world. This raid's exotic is the Necrochasm auto rifle. The first time you run the raid, a common auto rifle called Husk of the Pit will drop alongside a quest to first turn it into the legendary Eidolon ally variant, and then finally into the exotic. I won't cover the quest line or the catalyst in our guide. There are plenty of videos available to explain how to do this. So, now that we've covered the basics of the Enlighten mechanic, onto the raid itself. Your aim, after being dropped off, is to build a small bridge to a Hive gravity lift that lets you descend into the Hellmouth. You'll do this by standing on a capture plate. The process is sped up when anyone who gains the Enlighten buff uses it on the plate itself. The start area will probably look familiar as a patrol zone in the Hellmouth area of the moon, but is sectioned off as it was back in the days of D1. Before starting the encounter, you should take the time to sort out the order in which your fireteam will take the chalice. It's good if this is consistent for at least the first 2 encounters after the drop, so that you can get into a rhythm. I'd suggest that if you're Sherpering people through who are less experienced, that the Sherpa should go in position 1 or 6, with the next strongest Guardian going in position 6 or 1, and that the people you're guiding should go in positions 3 or 4. With a more experienced fireteam, individual positions are less important, but I think position 1 or 6 is still a good place for the fireteam lead, who'll make the callouts through the raid. After the initial cutscene, you'll spawn in to see a bucket with a chalice in and a Hive capture plate in front of it. You'll start by Guardian 1 moving next to the pedestal, where they'll see a prompt to interact with it to claim the Chalice of Light. Doing so starts the section, and enemies will start to spawn from the Hellmouth's edge. Guardian 1, with the rest of the fireteam, will move to the bridge plate and kill enemies as they spawn, keeping an eye on their meter. It's easy to get distracted with ad clearing, so don't get too caught up in the moment. Guardian 2 should be keeping a close eye on the chalice holder. This is pretty much how you should approach this and the next encounter. If you're next in line to claim, I'd advise that your only job should be to stick next to them and be ready to take the chalice when they're ready. Don't ADS too much. You could probably stay off ad clear completely, so that you're close by when their meter is full and their engulfed in light timer starts. At this point, Guardian 1 should let Guardian 2 know so that they can claim the chalice from them. Once that's done, Guardian 1 will now be enlightened and will see an Enlighten interact prompt on screen. They can now use this to dump the buff into the plate which starts the bridge building process. After enlightening the plate, Guardian 1 will see the 45-second drained of light timer start in their feed. Guardian 2 will repeat the process, spending time killing ads until their meter is full, at which point they'll tell Guardian 3. Guardian 3 will claim the chalice from them, and Guardian 2 will become enlightened. Guardian 2 can now enlighten the capture plate to cut the bridge building time. This is indicated to the whole fireteam by a message reading, "The bridge resonates with additional enlightenment" on screen. A few seconds later, the capture will be finished. This should be indicated by a sudden flash of green flame around the edge of the plate with an audio cue and a change in the background music, and the bridge will start building with a Hive lift at the end. The Chalice of Light meter and Drained of Light debuff timer will then disappear from the 3 Guardians' feeds. If Guardian 2 forgets to enlighten the plate, the process will take a little longer, but it's good to get practice in using the Enlighten buff for later in the raid. Before you jump down into the Hellmouth itself though, you should first check out 3 pairs of statues, 2 in the patrol area opposite where you are, and 1 when you look down into the Circle of Bones area inside the Hellmouth to see which ones are lit. Like previous raids, which have a minigame to complete to spawn an additional Deepsight raid weapon when you kill the boss, this is the version for Crota's End. You can check these statues before someone picks up the chalice, assign one person to do this during the firefight, or wait until the bridge is built. You'll need to make a note reading left to right of whether, in each case, it's the left or right statue that has the green flames lighting it up. You'll be activating either the left or right statue in 3 locations as you make your way to the boss encounter to get your extra red box gun. Once you've done that, the Fireteam can run across the now formed bridge and jump down in the long Hive lift at the end. You can YOLO across before the bridge finishes if you time your jumps right, or, as Aaron and Tukes demonstrate, you can become the Architect's latest victims if you don't. To be honest, your loadout here doesn't need too much thinking about. Pretty much any CQC ad clearing weapons and subclass will do. You'll mainly face thralls and cursed thralls, with some burst weapons to take down the yellow bar major blistered knights that appear. If you are having trouble with them, remember they are susceptible to stasis freeze and strand suspend effects. If you do want a closer look at the Deepsight statues so you know what you're looking for in future, a sniper rifle with a long zoom will make things much easier to see. For our run, Jester was the first chalice holder, Minnow second and Sheep third. Tukes spotted the statues and Aaron and Hat cleared ads. Running down from spawn, Jester collects the chalice from the bucket and, together with the rest of the Fireteam, runs down to the capture plate. Tukes continues to the base of the bridge to check the Deepsight statues.
Alright, we're good.
That's a good one.
Got it.
Tukes calls out that the Deepsight statues are right, left, right, and makes a note of that in the chat we've set up in our Discord server.
We are right, left, right.
When his chalice of light meter fills, Jester calls to Minnow to take the chalice and, as he does this, becomes enlightened. He then uses the buff to enlighten the plate and start the bridge construction process, also starting his drained of light timer.
Right, check it, man.
Right.
Yep, got it.
Thank you very much. Light.
When Minnow's chalice of light meter is full, he calls to Sheep to take the chalice and becomes enlightened. He gets an interaction prompt to accelerate enlightenment, and when he does, the bridge resonates with additional enlightenment message appears for everyone, together with a sound cue. As he uses the buff, he starts his drained of light timer. A few seconds later, the capture plate is completed. Note the flash of green fire around its edge. The chalice of light meter disappears from Sheep's feed, along with the drained of light timers from Jester and Minnow, and the Fireteam is free to start the descent.
Okay, I'm full. Sheep.
I'm taking it from you.
Cool.
As the bridge starts to build, there's a bit of an early pile-on to try to be first there, but Tukes and Aaron time their jumps a little too early. The Cluckers then break a proud raid tradition with no one pointing out that that's the flawless Ruined. Once inside, the lift will take them all the way down to the first encounter proper, the Abyss for the stills, or as it's more commonly referred to, the Lamps encounter.
So wait, do I need to dunk the chalice now?
No, didn't make it. Me and Tukes both done it.
Chalice should disappear as soon as a thing, but you
Yeah,
could
it
dunk
just disappeared. I had a moment of panic.
Yeah. Yeah, it disappears when you come back. I've been third so many times, yeah, I know. It just goes.
Yeah.
We can now leave it in the video.
What do I do with this
No, not to panic.
What's panic? I don't know what that word is.
That explains so much.
Ouch.
There's no loot that drops as a result of completing the descent. Think of it more as a quick tutorial level to introduce the basic elements of the Chalice of Light mechanic: collecting the chalice, filling the meter, the next holder claiming the chalice to enlighten the current holder, and the holder using that buff to achieve that section's mechanic, in this case enlightening the capture plate to build the bridge. There's no wipe timer here, and with it being relatively simple, the worst thing that can go wrong is that the chalice holder takes their eye off the meter and doesn't call for the next guardian to claim it, in which case they'll die and you'll lose a bit of time. If you're fast, you'll be able to reclaim the chalice next to their body before it despawns. If you're not, the bucket with it in is just behind the plate, so you can go and recollect it and continue. I'd like to thank Bryony for their incredibly detailed Crota's End encounter maps and for making them free to use, and Kyber from kyberscorner.com for permission to use their raid loot infographic. On behalf of the Cluckers, thanks for watching, we hope that's been helpful, and may all your drops be god rolls.